No. We've started to have a weekly with Bill just Wednesdays probably.
Just setting up. Yeah.
Call me or email me your times on Wednesday so I can run past on.
Sean, here.
Oh, here. I thought you meant tomorrow.
I think.
Oh, that's why I emailed you back. Are you meaning? I didn't know what you meant. I didn't realize you'd be here. What street? I figured. So no, I did not.
Okay. No, that's fine. I was found time.
Let's call that a win, huh? I'm sure there's more.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to call the December 5th Design Council meeting to order now. First item on the agenda today is the approval of the minutes from our November 7th Design Council meeting.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion to approve, second by Jeff Best. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So the second item on our agenda this morning is West Street from Pawnee to Erie. The artist doing this presentation. Anybody from city staff on this one? James, you got this one?
I'm not gonna say much. I've not been feeling the greatest, so I'm just gonna introduce the project.
All right, Michael, you want to do an introduction to it before you hand it to Todd? Extension. All right, all your.
Thank you for having us here today. I'm Michael Bailey, the project manager with Trans Systems. Like Todd Whipple, we are artists on this project. Jeff Best will be doing any landscape architecture we have. The concept. James Wagner is our project manager for the city. We also have Brett Kowski over here. A little background. A little background on this project as far as the location. I think all you are aware of where the West Street project is. It's the intersection of West Street, Pawnee, Southwest Boulevard intersection. Extends all the way from just south of Pawnee Street all the way to Harry, next to the project that was built just a couple years ago. That would lead with the, that's the general location. A quick overview of what the improvements are on the project. As I mentioned, the arterial piece is widening out the existing 4-lane roadway to a 5-lane arterial, just as it goes from Harry all the way up to Kellogg. So that's pretty straightforward on there. Lots of businesses down through this section, mostly industrial. Just widening that out. The big aspect of this project is right now there are key intersections with the Southwest Boulevard, the West Street intersection, and then just south of it, you have the Pawnee and West Street intersection. You got the two signals that are very close together. That's something we worked through the last couple of years with the city of coming up with this concept. Are actually combining those intersections into one. If you look at it, as we did traffic counts early on, you wouldn't think that Pawnee has the predominant movement of the arterial piece there, but it does. That's why you kind of see there the intersection is shifted south where the actual Pawnee intersection is today. And then the intersection with Southwest Boulevard and West Street is eliminated. And Southwest Boulevard actually tees down into Pawnee Street, just to the west of the railroad tracks there. The improvements on Pawnee extend a quarter mile to the east as well. All that'll be widened out. So the 4-lane section and tapering back down where it is. One thing I want to touch on this, the art budget on this project is $125,000. So there isn't a whole lot to work with here, but we do have some room to work with, and some area to work with. With that, I'll turn it over to Todd to kind of go over his thoughts on the concepts, how we got there, and then we'll kind of go over where the locations are.
Morning. I'd like to start off with, as we all know, because this is what we do, working in constructing the built environment. I'd like to point out, though, that we have the built environment, which is constructed within the natural environment. So we essentially have two environments that are integrated. Or you could say the built environment within the larger natural environment. In reviewing this site, the corridor and the major portion of work is going to be done on reconfiguring those intersections. In reviewing the site, driving along the corridor, I was impressed with the buildings and the businesses that have gone to considerable extent to present attractive frontages, incorporating landscaping and trees, along with obviously professionally designed signage, very attractive corridor as it is. So I didn't see a lot of need or necessarily opportunity for art forms along the corridor. At this intersection, which is being essentially completely redone, is the most opportune place. And actually, with the extent of work that's being done, it's probably the area that requires some sort of aesthetic treatment. There will be a lot of relatively large open spaces created in and around this intersection. As it stands today, when I was reviewing the site, there's the congestion of you get to the Southwest Boulevard and West Street intersection, and then within 100 feet or so is the Pawnee intersection. Two signaled intersections almost essentially at the same location. So it gets a little convoluted, possibly congested at times. While I was sitting in that congestion, I was looking around and I noticed that there were some elements of the natural environment remaining in that area. In the roadway, right-of-ways or easements and the railroad easements, there are some trees, but they don't necessarily come off as being landscaped. They actually have the appearance and maybe the suggestion of vestiges of trees that weren't removed to construct the railroad and the intersection. So to me, they took on a bit of a negative feeling. Again, they felt like vestiges rather than incorporating the natural environment with the built environment. So that became a thematic element for us. The integration or incorporation of the natural and built environment. And the city has been doing a lot toward that end with integrating green spaces, parks, trees, plantings within our capital improvement projects. So I wanted to take that as a theme and develop it from there. And again, focusing on this intersection, and the large open spaces, it requires something that isn't just a small standalone piece, which would be lost in the expanse. So we were thinking about something on a larger scale. Where's the, you want to go to the next slide and I'll pull this out. A preliminary model and representation, because we are at a preliminary stage. And I'll go back to the microphone for the recording. But what we have is, what we're proposing is essentially a grid pattern, which is the built environment is essentially mathematic, angular. We build buildings, and most of Wichita is roadways are laid out on a grid pattern, whereas the natural environment is more organic and fluid as far as linear and planar forms. So what we're proposing is integrating elements of the built environment represented by 12 by 12 inch I-beams, vertically arranged in a grid, and interspersed or interwoven with that are vertical elements from the natural environment, trees. Now, we want to create, and it's represented as just a hill over to the left of the lower portion. We want to do some earthwork and grading to create an interesting topography through this area. And then the I-beams will be at varied heights so that no matter what the ground is doing, they all reach a certain plane and establish a horizontal plane through this grove of trees. To help accentuate that and to add an element for night viewing of it, we want to do lighting on top of each of the posts, and that helps to establish that plane through the trees. These lights I don't really perceive at this point as providing illumination of the area, but rather as being identifying points of light that help to establish that horizontal plane running through the trees. And again, this is a early conceptual representation. Within that, with that, I'd like to say that I envision this as actually not just being the grid itself, but actually having other trees ranging out from it, so that it has more of the appearance of a larger grove of trees with this grid situated within it. And that's essentially the concept. Where's that? Where's that over there? It shows the location. Okay, so again, we have, we're going to have some fairly large areas once we're finished reconstructing this. But we'd like to locate this, obviously, where that grid pattern is. And you do see that there are some existing trees in that location. I'm not sure if any will have to be removed in the construction process.
Some of those will have to come out. Some of them possibly could stay.
So those could again be integrated into not necessarily removed, but integrated into the design of this grid. One other thing I'd like to talk about is the typical vantage point of this will be of the motorist. So you're going to have a moving vantage point as you move past it or around the corner. And that helps that's why I brought the model. It helps to establish that grid when you're moving past it. The grid tends to emerge and emerge in the trees and move through the trees as your vantage point moves. So that also adds another element to the piece, is the movement of the viewer. And obviously we didn't want to locate anything that's too imposing in this area, because you don't want to create distracted drivers. You don't want to take people's attention, motorists' attention, away from the road. So you create a problem. So that's, I think with that, we can open it up for questions.
Little housekeeping before we dive into that I should have done before you started.
Okay.
Just to both of you, Michael and Todd. Are you is this a preliminary concept you're looking for?
Yes.
On? Is this, okay, so you're planning on bringing it back at a later date?
Mhm.
Okay. So they're looking for our approval on the preliminary concept. I guess I will tell both of you, as we go around the room and make comments, any comment an individual council member makes, it's a recommendation. You or something to think about. Our final motion is what you want to make sure to address. If a comment's made that doesn't show up in the final motion, then for you not part of it. So with that, I'm going to open it up to design council members. Comments, thoughts? Susan?
What kind of trees are you thinking about?
Jeff and I have had some discussion about that, very preliminary at this point. Obviously, I would defer to Jeff on the specific species, but we are considering an deciduous species that will drop its leaves. And I think in the winter, that could actually become very attractive, particularly in icy, snowy conditions. Those lights are going to have a tendency to refract off of the branches. And so it will have a different appeal and look throughout the season. Plus, some sort of evergreen, junipers, that sort of thing, are going to block this grid. I'd rather see these points of light emerging or flickering through the trees rather than having some dense evergreen that completely blocks the view. That's as far as I've gotten with a choice of species.
You know, I always come from the point of maintenance, and if I would hate to see a whole bunch of red buds and crab apples and stuff like that in there, because they don't last. I mean, they're not lasting, at least last 20, 25 years. But if you went with species that, oaks and things like that, that might last longer.
I appreciate that. And one species we did indicate just in our own conversations that might be appropriate would be a type of oak. I forget the specific type, but again, we're early in that stage. But we do want trees that will last. I definitely want trees that will mature and take on this appearance.
We also look at fall colors. That could be a good addition to your design.
Thank you. Yeah, we will consider that.
Question. Are the lights, are they going to be like a white, yellowy, or do they have the ability to change colors?
We haven't given the lighting a lot of thought. I would say that they'll be LED, and I'm not sure that the addition of color adds or detracts to, again, to me, these lights are to establish a plane through the trees. So we could consider, an alternating color. We haven't really gotten into the specifics of lights or the type or brand of light. And again, 125,000 is fairly tight budget. So if we had to preclude anything for budgetary reasons, I'd say lights that change color might be the first thing we'd preclude. But we will consider that.
Armando?
It's the ground treatment for the location.
Right now, it's just, grass out there, and that's what we were kind of considering, especially with that whole area. The roadway will be taken away. So there is some discussion of what the city wants to do with that whole area too. But around the yard, it just go back to grass. Right now, it's in a low spot. Kind of goes across the old railroad bed right now. So there will be, opportunities to do other items, but I mean, right now we're just kind of considering these things will be on footings. So we'll stick up above the grass just a little bit for ease of maintenance and mowing. But we were just planning on that just being seated back, or it could be sodded through there for that area.
Everything stays right away.
This is technically across the old railroad right away, but so is our Southwest Boulevard. So that's a discussion with KDOT, the access to that property. So that's a city, they actually have rights to do things in that area, improvements. So that has been submitted to KDOT. As far as the roadway and any improvements on that property. There's that rails to trails area. So that's an ongoing discussion on the whole project. So there's